Ralph and Snitter are two dogs in quite the jam.
We just need a master.
Just need a master? Art thou out of their minds?
They're on the run from some mean old hunters and loony scientists. They'll have to team up with the Todd, a fox with a taste for eggs and mischief. Bring the whole family. Make your kids watch it in a dark room by themselves with no other distractions. There's excitement, fun, blood, and the importance of friendship. The Plague Dogs. Now available on Blu-ray. Rated G.
Oh yes I know, I'm going home. Yes I know, I'm going home. When I reach the end.
Hello, I am CraftyAndy, and this is Crafty Arts. When you are othered by the society you live in, everything done to you is ultimately permissible. When it comes to the ruling class, the real owners, and let's not be ambiguous about it, the billionaire owner class that runs the media, that funds the so-called independent voices of truth.
Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again.
Everyone that is not them is an other.
Everyone who isn't us is an enemy.
So everything they do that affects you and me and everyone else that's not them is ultimately permissible. Do I really need to point to some examples in order to hammer that point home? It doesn't matter what time period I pick, whether it's today or 100 years ago.
Elon Musk's dismantling of U.S. aid has, over the last year, directly resulted in more than 800,000 deaths. The majority of those deaths were children. A peer-reviewed study published in The Lancet estimates that there will be an additional 9.4 million deaths by 2030 if these cuts aren't reversed. Elon Musk is one of the greatest mass murderers of all time.
So whatever sense of hierarchy you may have when it comes to your fellow human animals and the non-human animals, it's really nothing in comparison to the power and position the owner class has. Yet we still find plenty of people to other amongst each other. Not to be redundant, but that's how it is.
It is now illegal for trans people to drive in Kansas.
Today I got a letter from the driver's license bureau saying my license is invalid.
It happened. I received my letter from the Kansas government saying that I need to change my driver's license.
If they're caught driving with their current license, which affirms their identity, they could face a Class B misdemeanor, which carries up to 6 months in prison.
I just have one little piece of commentary about this. Trans people, queer people, it's time to get the fuck out of the Midwest and the South! This is a 5-alarm fucking message! Time to move! Sorry.
Might as well be a different species to the people who see you as anything other than fully human. This is not a review of the Plague Dogs and going over beat by beat of the plot that's been done a million times. This is a reflection of the Plague Dogs and its book and movie format. Those who have heard of it or experienced it, let me know how you reflect on it. Today we have 2 art pieces I made that have prints for sale in tribute of the story. That's stuck with me for quite some time now. What is the Plague Dogs? It's an exercise of dread, struggle, hope, and despair. These are the themes that scream loudest when one experiences the Plague Dogs, be it movie or book form, but especially movie form.
The following motion picture contains mature subject matter. Parents may consider some of the program content unsuitable for children. Parental discretion is advised.
Spoiler-free for now, the plot involves 2 dogs. Snitter, a fox terrier with a needlessly experimental surgery done on his brain, in an attempt to merge the conscious with the subconscious. And Rolf, a Labrador who has only known the environment of the lab, being forced to go through endurance tests that involve him swimming in a water tank until the point of exhaustion and drowning. Through random chance, they are able to escape their cages, and walking throughout the lab, we witness some of the experiments going on. Monkeys in restraint chairs, one isolated in a Skinner box. On their way out, the good boys break open an aquarium, housing rats that were being used in experiments involving the bubonic plague. This fact would be picked up on by a reporter and later embellished for the sake of headlines, creating some sort of plague dog situation. The dogs would make a shaky friendship with a local wild fox, while trying to survive killing local sheep after efforts trying to find a new caretaker seem futile. The movie stays focused on the plight of the good boys and their guilty fox friend, the Todd, while the book is expansive in its characterization of the lab officials all pushing the buck of blame to each other, the journalists sensationalizing the situation to the point the plague rumor is created, spreading panic among the locals, and politicians trying to win over public opinion and voting points. It's a great critique and satire of all these aspects that seem to be forever systemic in our supposed superior Western society. My discovery of this movie was accidentally on early YouTube. It was such an anomaly to me. Focused on non-human characters, almost completely devoid of humor, this movie came out in a world where the majority of animated features are tales of cute, whimsical stories and cartoons lacking any kind of engaging narrative. Aside from the great Ralph Bakshi, up until the 2000s, the entirety of animated movies and TV shows were pigeonholed into children's entertainment or varying degrees of plagiarizing the Simpsons formula. The amount of honest cynicism on display when it comes to the movie directed by Martin Rosen is something to behold. Out of the lab and into the wilderness, they are thrusted into a world they are not equipped for and will not have them. Snitter was originally raised by a master in a city before being sold to the lab, and Rolf, whose world was only the lab until this point. I would be remiss not to mention the experiments conducted in the lab, cleverly named Animal Research, Surgical, and Experimental, or ARS. Thanks to some of the notes I stole from Cardinal West's video, I'm able to remember how the book I listened to goes into the research details. Though the lab is fictional, the experiments were all really conducted during a time when non-human animal experimentation was given no ethical guardrails. There are pigeons who have had parts of themselves removed to determine the effects it may have on their homing ability. Page 23. While some birds succeeded in returning home, others did not. One could draw the firm and valuable conclusions. First, that birds whose faculties had been impaired were less swift and competent in getting home than birds whose faculties had not. Page 27. In order to understand mortality rates in regards to animals being transported by air, a group of monkeys are mistreated to discover that overcrowding, rough handling, and prolonging thirst were beyond doubt the contributors to high death rates.
You don't say!
A group of cats were being kept permanently in hoods that cover their eyes and ears. Why? To make the grand discovery of what the effects will be if cats are kept permanently in hoods covering their eyes and ears. Tobacco companies at one point commissioned to have 24 beagles exposed to various types of cigarette smoke in order to possibly develop a non-carcinogenic product, resulting in the dogs getting cancer and ultimately being killed. This one is doubly fucked to me. Imagine being a scientist and you went through all this schooling with ideas to try and improve people's lives, and the only research you get to do is ones that may result in higher profits for a corporation or better ways for your government to kill people.
48 hours is jungless mulch. You drop the pellets a week before monsoon and presto.
The reality seemingly more true, as federal funding has been cut from cancer research in the richest country in the world, the United States. Reflecting on this aspect more then and especially now, we look at such practices with disgust at the level of how unnecessarily cruel they are. However, you could argue that's how we as a species learn valuable lessons in being more humane. Like, if you ever read about the conditions of how slaves were transported to the American colonies, well, we have a video game for that. It's called Slave Tetris. Come on, buckaroo. We got 300 slaves to pack in this boat. Don't worry, they got plenty of room to wiggle around. A whole 2.5 feet worth of height below the deck for the entire 8-week trip. Sure, some of them might get sick. Some of them may die, stewing in a pool of piss, puke, and shit. But that's just the cost of doing business. In the end, however, after the practice was abolished, we learned a valuable lesson. Well, after almost all the Native Americans were killed and then stealing the land from Mexico, they stole from the natives first. Then after that, we learned a valuable lesson. Well, after we used black people and other undesirables as human guinea pigs to see how syphilis affected people. But after that, we learned a valuable lesson. I guess today we forego the experimentation process and just straight up poison small towns with fracking, data centers, cop cities, and ICE agents murdering people in broad daylight and having no repercussions. I seen the videos. I saw her turn the tires towards the cop, slam the gas while her lesbo girlfriend said, "Drive, baby, drive." Then I saw the deranged look in her eye, and saw her hit the cop with her vehicle. But after all of that is said and done, I'm sure we'll all learn a very valuable lesson, right? Right? And while putting this video together, the United States decided to bomb Iran and annihilate a school full of women and children, in the process of murdering the supreme leader of the theological hellhole the CIA helped create in the first place. Someone want to explain to me how bombing people makes them love your country?
Now back to our show!
Back to our good boys, out in the wilderness under constant threat of starvation and inherent suspicion of strangers' intent due to their experiences at the laboratory.
It's got this green collar, Jack. Nothing on it but a number. Let's put it in the back of the car light and get it off the road. Bloody hell!
Not much you could possibly laugh at within a setting like this. Plenty to cry about, though. Snitter will flow between wanting to have a caretaker to escaping to their own island where they can live out freely in peace. An escape, a sort of Isle of Dogs, one could imagine.
It's our island. Don't you see it?
It doesn't matter that it doesn't exist in this case. When stresses compound to a point, people will either become superstitious or turn to hard drugs or other vices, if not self-destruct entirely. The Dogs Imagine Island here is a comforting fantasy. Comforting fantasies, I imagine, are a good driving factor for a lot of the downtrodden people in this country. It's how you keep the poors in line, after all. Hey, everything sucks now, but you know what? It all gets better after you're dead. Isn't it interesting how we're always told everything was better before we were alive and only gets better again after we die? There wouldn't be much need to look deep into things when you have a roof over your head, some food every day, things to look forward to beyond the daily work grind. There is no need to critique or deconstruct the status quo when it happens to work out for you. Often I see it only gets questioned when someone is victimized by our current system. Anyone who is straight and white can go their whole lives thinking everything is just fine, generation to generation, even if a $50K salary isn't enough for the single family household anymore. As long as you got food at the grocery store, you can barely afford, but still afford, everything is fine. For our good boys, there is a lot of philosophical talk in the book about the role humans and other animals play with the idea dogs are supposed to serve the human animal. As far as I see it, the way the ruling class looks at people like us, we might as well be dogs contemplating the benefit of loyalty compared to rebellion when it comes to our corporate and government owners.
You know, I was keen to being a good dog, Snitter. I really wanted to be a good dog. I'd have done anything for them. Anything but the metal water. But surely, Snitter, dogs ought to be able to trust men, ought they? It doesn't matter anymore, old Ralph. I know. I'm only saying these things to stop myself jumping up and barking at the things rushing past. I wasn't a good dog. Wish I'd been. Whatever dogs are meant for, they weren't meant for the metal water. If you can't live by rotten rules, you have to find some of your own.
After the hunting and killing of local sheep escalates,
into multiple dead hunters. The media sensationalizes the situation to the point the military is called in to neutralize our good boys. There are to be no chances taken, no attempt to understand or empathize. The easiest solution is just to kill them, after all. With no salvation in sight, Snitter and ROWF ultimately swim out into the ocean. ROWF overcoming his fear in support of his boyfriend, and I mean friend. They can't possibly be boyfriends. That would be crazy. Can you imagine an adventure with two gay main characters that are also dogs? That would be forced politics in this totally apolitical movie about cute dogs and their cuddly, guilty fox friend. I'm sure we're going to sell thousands of plushies based on this movie. All those characters. ROWF, Snitter. He has a little removable bandage attachment. Where was I? Oh, yes. Snitter snaps back to reality. Oh, there goes spaghetti. Realizing how dire their situation is, there is no escape this time. No hope for retrieval as they inevitably will sink and drown. Snitter's hope fades. As this plays out, ROWF doesn't give in to panic or desperation. Instead, he starts to see the fabled island himself.
There it is. There. Can't you see it? Our island. Just stay with me. I'll get you there.
A comforting thought, brought by ROWF and given to Snitter to hold on to as the water fills their lungs and the oxygen is sapped from their minds and bodies. Soon, there will be no more pain, the cruel world left behind, free at last. It doesn't matter what their lives were to anyone else. It was theirs, and they refused to let it go as others tried to take it from them up until the final end. The island within this story, you could say, represents the dream of a better tomorrow, but hope is just a wish. Perseverance resonates a lot more. Refusing to die. Sometimes, in defiance, all one can do is just live and try to keep on living. Learning more about the hardships of those throughout history and seeing the repeating patterns of the current events happening overseas, Gaza, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Syria, Venezuela, many incidents for every decade. Some can wonder, how can a person go on? How can you live after losing everything that gives your life meaning? Some don't. Many still go on persevering because even though the ruling power bends towards self-serving interests, human nature of the everyday person bends towards the will to try and leave a place better than what it was when they got there. So what's the point of it all? At first I wanted to say that there is no point, but after some thinking I realized that the point is simple. So simple that I myself was resistant to accept it. That when it comes to our main characters here, as with the experiments I mentioned earlier, there's no other greater purpose beyond causing pain and misery for the sake of it. Perpetuated by people serving the interests of those who will not hear us, who believe they are divinely ordained by virtue of their birth and status. Whatever purpose we ascribe to ourselves can be overwritten by those with the power over us. Our two canine and single Vulpes characters are easily compared to a number of tragic human experiences. War refugees, immigrants, targeted minorities, committed, hell, even regular prisoners in the United States at least. When you are othered, referred to as less than human, you might as well be a non-human animal to these other human animals. The results are splattered all throughout history, with new examples actively unfolding during and after this piece releases, I'm sure. The Plague Dogs movie, I would think younger people might find a bit boring or upsetting, but hey, life is full of upsets. Sooner you get used to them, the better, I think. There is a lot of talk of how you can't make this movie today in this environment we live in. Well, that's a bullshit statement. Example being Blazing Saddles. That's always the go-to movie people point to with that statement. Thing is, Blazing Saddles couldn't be made when it came out.
In order to get the film released, he would still have to get the studio's approval.
He said just the words,
Laws in gain! Just that will stop this movie from going beyond these 3 cities. You know, and there was that kind of talk. They weren't going to release the picture because it was so bizarre. So
quickly, the other example is Robert Downey Jr.'s blackface in Tropic Thunder. It was ridiculous when it came out. That was the joke. Other times, they are referring to things that simply perpetuate negative stereotypes and othering of minorities they can't help but get all defensive over. It's as if critically analyzing media is the same as taking away their favorite toy to some of these people. These weird anti-media literacy people. What the fuck is up with that shit, huh? Can I break for a moment on that? Just watch shit, just consume shit, and not think about it? I have a feeling that a lot of these people that are decrying new movies and video games don't even bother actually engaging with the media they enjoyed as children. They just look back, think about the feelings it gave them, and that's enough. If they were to watch it today, they would likely just be watching it passively as they drink their woes away or just chatter with their friends over the damn movie. There's just this sad sack of people who make their living now talking about how everything sucks now compared to how it all was better back then, and I just feel pity for them.
If you're just a normal man who loves video games and entertainment, but are just tired of all this nonsense just being shoved right in over and over again, you should probably subscribe to our channel.
And what nonsense is it that frustrates these very normal men who love video games and entertainment? The answer is whatever you want it to be.
Watching people lose their sense of curiosity and identity and making their very core being about the things they enjoyed 20 to fucking 40 years ago now. Or even being so attached and dedicated to some franchise or product or game series or anime series or movie series, getting all upset whenever things dare to change and evolve from where things were before. What seems to me, though, when it comes to making things, is that you just can't make certain things in this no-risk, overblown, budgeted, corporate-run environment. There would never be a Plague Dogs made under the Disney Pixar label, unless you want it to look like the Animal Farm picture by Angel Studios.
I parked the car!
Let's have no one do that again.
Animal Farm.
There's some hope with this recent growth of indie projects, ranging from shows like Lackadaisy, Hell of a Boss, Digital Circus, to movies like Bird Boy, Unicorn Wars, Another Day of Life, Mars Express, just to name a few that I've actually seen.
Perhaps a Pride of Baghdad adaptation is possible after all. You know, it's about a group of lions that escape a zoo and they have a adventure, so to speak. Yeah. Or what about Elephant Men? Can we adapt that? It's like Blade Runner meets Zootopia. Anyone? Anyone, please? Well, at least I can dream about seeing a naked rhino-human hybrid on the big screen, in the shower, all wet and stuff. A man can dream. A man can dream.
Now back to the show.
Speaking of the big screen, Plague Dogs bombed hard. Having trouble getting a distributor, losing the company $500,000 in the 80s. So I jumped on the opportunity to get it on DVD and later Blu-ray, which came with an interview of the director who reflected on the night they screened the film.
And I recall when it opened in the UK with great expectations because of Watership Down, we showed it at a cinema in the West End, and the manager, who's a good friend of mine, was standing next to me. And these two ladies walked up the stairs, and because we were standing aside, they said to us, "Any one of you young men responsible for this picture?" And said, "He made it." And one of the women said, "How can you do that to those dogs?" and hit me with her umbrella. And I said, "This is not going to go well." I delivered this very difficult film that was in opposition to everything all our conceptions about dogs and animals, nice, and animation. Always funny, always nice. I had that problem with Watership Down where they expected rabbits to have little hats and canes, which they didn't. So This took it a step further, made it even more difficult. I mean, never let it be said that I went the easy way.
But like many great overlooked films, after it was illegally posted on the internet, it gained a cult following. Why do this to yourself, though? Why put yourself through this dreaded emotional stress test? Really, when I wrote that question out, I didn't have an answer. I was asking myself for the first time. Perhaps is to have a experience unlike what I've ever faced or likely will ever face in life, in a safe way that involves people playing pretend with acting, and in this case, drawing, animation. Maybe in some cases I can relate to the plight of the characters to a degree. I'm pretty privileged and, as far as I know, am mentally stable. A child might think libertarianism isn't a politically brain-dead mindset, but when you spend your time in the adult world having to fend for yourself, you realize all the various ways luck can be a deciding factor of survival or homelessness. There are greater details in one of my other videos, Going Through Hell, about me and my current husband, one of two, scratching and clawing our way to stability to becoming a polyamory throuple and a little dog too. Even at this current level, it's a fragile state. If one of us is incapacitated, if there is some weather disaster, we are not in a position to take that financial cost. Working people, the 99%, us, we are all closer to being the equivalent to the immigrant, the unemployed, the homeless, the plague dogs, than to any billionaire who has ever existed. Times I've even felt guilty for enjoying myself, for daring to relax, because I know that teeter-totter we are balancing. Why I'm so driven to try and make my creativity financially viable under my own business, while not losing my principles or integrity. To understand at least a minuscule of the suffering this world has brought upon people past and present, the negative experiences tied to class, and the made-up concepts of race and gender is key to also understanding why perhaps people might get really angry and burn down a few billion-dollar-owned Walmarts in response to generations of shortcomings due to economic oppression on a systemic level. It helps keep perspective on the ones who really make life harder, because it ain't your neighbor, it isn't the drag queen reading books to children, it isn't some illegal immigrant fleeing disaster or cartels, and it certainly isn't the 1 to 5 trans people out of an entire state population trying to play a sport. The first clue to anyone should be the fact that the money and marketing is all behind promoting the idea that people with no power are somehow responsible for your shortcomings and struggles in life. There are people who never want to talk about anything important or be confronted with any happenings in the greater world, who indulge in such an overabundance of escapism that even the idea of looking deeper into potential meanings of a piece of art can be offensive in itself. How currently you may hear the phrase, "It's just not that deep, bro," unless there is some genuine trauma, or you're in a position where you're just too goddamn busy to ever have the time to actually think for yourself. I believe that's a good way to stunt your growth as a person. Placing your head in the sand simply because you got yours and life is just peachy, so why you gotta rain on parade, huh? Why you gotta show me stuff that makes me feel sad? Just as much, a person who is locked into survival mode to the point there is no period of relief outside of sleep and possibly a sit-down meal, those types of people are the most easily manipulated and accepting whatever status quo they happen to be in living for the moment, ready to jump on any bandwagon narrative that has the biggest marketing budget fueling it. Nothing short of there being no food in the supermarket or a tragedy may get them to finally wake up. I want to make it clear that it's not about being smart or dumb. As far as I see it, these people are victims, and I can relate because I know what it's like to be working 60 hours a week and having only enough spare time to take a nap, go to the laundromat and get your clothes done because that takes fucking forever when you got a week's worth of clothes. And all you can think about is trying to make that sale, trying to get ahead. All the while, the world could just be burning around you, but you have no time to think outside of your little bubble of survival. So, of course, when some narrative comes along, like say, in my case, was transgenders,
people who are just faking queerness, there was a moment I was buying into it. But just like creationism, I eventually made time to look into it. In this case, it was less than a year, and found that that claim was just completely and utter bullshit. Because there wasn't a bunch of stories of kids coming out of high school saying like they had that experience, right, where they're being pressured by peers to just say they're queer when they're not. No real evidence of a actual social contagion out there.
But here I am getting way off topic. This is a video about a movie that's about dogs trying to find a home. It's like Homeward Bound. If Homeward Bound went to hell, I should just come on here and say movie good, movie bad, like everyone else does, and that's that, right?
Damn these cobwebs.
Thank you, Shade Nocturne, for the introduction. He talks movies and shit. You should check him out. And Cardinal West. I stole a bunch of his notes from the meaning of Watership Down in the Plague Dogs video that he did. I don't have a lot of time to take notes while I'm listening to audiobooks at the job. So it's very appreciative when I can find a source that does his sources.
These prints are for sale at the Etsy store under CraftyAndyArts. Patreon and YouTube members exist for discounts and early access to pictures and video. I'm currently working on the longer game, creating some new comics, books, and making a bunch of videos and getting those together so I have a nice, steady release cycle. The next video will be about the movie Bird Boy. I also have one regarding an article about a child's right to be gay, a series of personal stories when working for a multi-level marketing company, or network marketing company as some people like to call it, and a biographical recollection of what it's like to go through ex-gay torture camp. So all that is in the pipeline, along with other projects on the other channels, Paws Off and Weird Zors. Stay tuned.